Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for attending our webinar today. Just a couple of quick introductions before we get into the main body of the event. So, as you can possibly see on the side, we've got a Q&A panel. So the live event Q&A, which is mentioning that it's using your PC audio, and that the event will be recorded, and that if you've got any Q&A, we can use this box for the questioning. Well, my name's Ian Lohman. I am Director at Adepteq, and I'm responsible for client and partner relationships. I'll be joined today by Adam Sally from our partners Datto, and he's a Senior Product Specialist for the SaaS Protection that we're going to be talking about today. So if you could click on, please, Adam. So the agenda's slightly changed from what was originally sent out because we felt we'd change it to have a better flow through the threats, protection, infection and recovery process for your data. So we're now going to start off with a quick introduction to us, what the threat landscape is, how to protect, the ransomware demo, and Adam will show you that infecting a PC and then how we recover that. Microsoft's recommendations for backup and how you should be using backup, and then the Q&A, which I've said is available in the panel as we go through, and then we'll make sure at the end that any questions that are still outstanding will be answered before we close the event off. So if you could click on, please. So who are Adepteq? We're very much experts in Microsoft 365 and SharePoint. So all of the 365 environment is very much where we're interested, and SharePoint specifically from the data protection aspect. So we're a Microsoft Gold partner, and we have Gold partners in a couple of competencies that are all around the Microsoft Cloud piece and SharePoint. We're also a Silver partner with Datto, so we've recently attained the Silver level through more and more of our clients using the backup solution that we're promoting today. What we found is in recent months, especially since the pandemic, that a lot of our existing clients are moving over to the service as more and more of their people are working from home, working on non-company devices. They're no longer on the company network, so their data is more at risk. Moving on there, just a quick glimpse of the sort of companies that we're working with, a real breadth of organisations from every sort of industry and size, from large globals and multinationals to small local businesses, charities, government bodies. It's a real breadth of the organisations that we're working with. If you could move on, please, Adam. So what do? Well, these are like the trendy marketing speak really of what we do. So I'm sure everyone's heard about digital transformation and how this is, one of the buzzwords recently. But the other areas are all things around that Office 365, work from anywhere, sort of access anywhere story. And the key area that we're focusing on today is the secure your data. So how do we help our clients secure their data in the Microsoft Cloud? So if I now hand over sorry, hold on a second. And we've got a few people just emailed me to say that they're having problems with a link. So if you just hold on a second while I just see if I can attend to that. If I hand you over to Adam, and I'll carry on with that in the background.
Fantastic, brilliant. Can you hear me all right, Ian?
Yes, I can hear you all right, yeah.
Perfect. Good morning, all. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us this morning. And thank you, Ian, for the introduction. As Ian mentioned, my name's Adam Sally. I'm the Senior Product Specialist for Datto's continuity portfolio for Europe. So within the continuity portfolio, Datto has a breadth of technologies designed to underpin the services that Ian and his team provide you to protect your businesses, and more critically, more to the point, to protect the data that is one of the core assets owned by your organization. Now, this morning, we're going to talk primarily about protecting data that sits within cloud-based application services, and obviously, namely in this instance, Microsoft 365. So when we look at Microsoft 365 and the data residing within it, We ask the question quite frequently, is your data protected? And do you understand the requirements needed of you ensuring that data is protected within those applications? Because so often the preconception, and in a number of instances misconception, is that my data is in the cloud, and therefore why do I need to put anything else in place to protect said data? Well, unfortunately, on the basis that the cloud is really no longer an option since 2008 and Microsoft removing small business server as an option for the small to medium organization out there, the cloud has been the only option. We've almost been forced to adopt cloud-based applications, be that Microsoft 365 or Google Suite. Everybody is now using some form of software as a service or SaaS-based application. Actually, 98% of global organizations use some form of SaaS-based application, and just shy of 60% of that 98% are using Microsoft 365. So as I'm sure you can imagine, those sort of cyber criminals, those organizations, institutions, and individuals who make a living out of sort of holding people to ransom, should I say, in terms of attacking people's data and subsequently demanding payment for the release of said data, are now focusing their attention on where the opportunity lies, and that's absolutely software as a service-based applications. And we'll come on to in a little more detail what that actually looks like in real terms. So let's talk about today. Let's talk about the past 12 months and the horrendous experience that the entire globe has been through and what impact that has had on both the risks facing organizations today and the adoption of said SaaS-based applications. So across Europe, there's been almost a 700% increase in the adoption of Microsoft Teams, the platform that we're talking to you on right now. And subsequently, that adoption to Microsoft Teams has added huge complexity and strain on businesses in terms of the way in which they both work day to day and secure the way that they work. Ensure that the data that's being transferred, passed between individuals, stored in disparate locations on people's laptops from home are protected in the way that they expect it to be of yesteryear, when it's sitting on a spinning disk in the corner of the office, or it's sitting on some sort of network share in a centralized location. Now, organizations are facing these huge concerns around lack of controllability, and it's leveraging the expertise of individuals like Ian and the team around him, ensuring that your data is safe irrespective of where it resides. So focusing on SaaS-based applications, 1 in 3 companies using SaaS-based applications lost data. Now, losing data is a very, very large problem in a world where compliance, legislative stipulation, customer relations, and data protection laws mandate that organizations put measures in place to prevent losing data, and certainly to prevent data falling into the hands of individuals, organizations, and institutions that it absolutely shouldn't. 13% of data loss is caused by hackers and viruses. Now, this statistic is growing exponentially year on year. Obviously, 100% is the whole, and the proportion caused by human error, which we'll come on to in a minute, unfortunately is not changing a huge amount. We as a species aren't getting a huge amount smarter. We're not also getting a huge amount less intelligent, but the remainder in terms of natural disasters and system outages and this and the other are decreasing as hardware and services become hardier. But that cybercrime component is increasing exponentially. And when we start looking at cybercrime, the #1 threat facing organizations today is ransomware. And ransomware, we're seeing around 5,000 net new strains of ransomware being deployed every single day. So if you relate that to the current pandemic and these new strains and outbreaks that are occurring, times that by 5,000, and then you appreciate that the antiviruses of the world, the vaccines can only protect against what they know exists. So having that front end protection is really no longer enough. So 7% of data loss caused by malicious deletions. So I catch wind that I'm leaving Datto. I catch wind that Datto's caught wind that I've been perhaps sending emails to organizations or individuals that I shouldn't have. And therefore they're going to get rid of Adam. Now, the first thing Adam's going to do is go into his Microsoft 365, and remove any potential evidence, leaving Adam exposed to those crafty emails he's been sending. Now, Adam's also been having conversations with customers or suppliers or stakeholders within the business or outside the business. And subsequently, at the point Adam deletes all the data within his Microsoft 365 account, all of that data is no longer accessible or available to the business. And therefore, that business is potentially facing compliance or legislative prosecution for breaching said legal requirements. And then 47% caused by end user deletions. This is that accidental component. This is that people unfortunately make mistakes. People unfortunately do things wrong, and individuals throughout the world are not expected to be IT professionals. They're not expected to be experts in this space, and that's absolutely why we've got Ian and the team as those subject matter experts, those trusted advisors, to educate and ensure that you've got systems in place to mitigate against the worst occurring. So when we look at the globe and what we're seeing, specifically Datto, we run what we call a ransomware report every year, and it's something that Ian and the team can make available to you if you're interested in having a read through it. It's full of interesting statistics and factual information around the risks facing small to medium businesses and our subsequent partners that service those small to medium businesses from country to country. And when you start looking at some of the statistics around specifically SaaS-based applications, you see that the rise in threats facing these cloud-based infrastructures, these SaaS-based applications, is increasing year on year. So I'm not going to dwell on that too much, but obviously, if you are interested, please reach out to Ian directly and request that information, and we can make sure that report is made available to you. So I'm going to take a little bit of sort of time now to go through actually what this looks like in real terms. So the threat is absolutely real. I've explained that to you, but don't take my word for it. I'll show you exactly what that looks like and how quickly an organization can become susceptible to this ransomware threat that I've discussed. So I'm going to jump into my computer. So I'm lying, actually. This isn't my computer. This is a computer owned by a chap called Walter Richards. And Walter Richards works for an organization called Richmond Gardens. And Walter Richards is actually, and the team at Richmond Gardens are actually a customer of Ian's, and they've procured Datto SaaS Protection. Now, Walter and the team work in the same way that a lot of other organizations do. They've got data stored locally on their machine, and that data syncs from their local machine directly to Microsoft 365. Absolutely, it's keeping that data live, accessible, able to be shared between and collaborated on between individuals within an organization through services like OneDrive and SharePoint and Exchange, but also ensures that there's an element of safety, right? The data is on the machine locally on this laptop. The data is also in the cloud, and therefore it adds a level of resilience and redundancy in terms of ensuring that data is available here, and worse to happen, I chuck this down the stairs, data is also available up there. Now, unfortunately, the reality is, due to the mechanism of data syncing between endpoint machines and the cloud, that poses quite a threat when it comes to things like ransomware. So I've just had an email from the CEO of Richmond Gardens saying he's just sent something to me that I need to review, and it's in the downloads folder of my OneDrive. So I jump in here, and there I work in finance, and quarterly reports are absolutely something I deal with day to day. So I don't see any issue with looking at that. So let me just open up my documents again, just so you can see those. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that quarterly reports file, and bizarrely, the file itself disappears, which seems a bit strange. Now, it's deleted itself. I'm going to ping the CEO and say, well, that document that you've just said that I need to have a look at has just bizarrely deleted. Oh, well, that is peculiar. All of my documentation has now turned white. The extensions have changed. Here we go. So now what I've got here is a pop-up stipulating that my data has been encrypted and the data within my entire organization is likely to have been encrypted due to the worm nature of this particular type of ransomware. And by worm, what I mean is it can jump from my PC over the network to other PCs, not too dissimilar to the attack on the National Health Service in 2017, where it wiped out 175,000 machines were compromised as a result of that attack. But I do have the ability to transfer a number of Bitcoin that they're stipulating to an address of their stipulation within 3 days and potentially get my data back. Now, what I would say is in this situation, when they say, give us this amount of money and we'll give you your data back, you're then putting your trust in the cyber criminals that attacked you in the first place. And criminals are inherently not overly honest when it comes to the dealings with their victims. So let's assume that they're not going to give us our data back, and we need to find another way of getting that data back. Now, obviously, as I said earlier, I've got data on this local machine and in the cloud. So I must have redundancy for that data. I must be able to get that data back from the cloud. So I can actually jump in here and see that, oh, all the data synced up to my OneDrive is also white and it's all gone. So obviously it's still ripping through that, but the more recent synchronizations are infected. So I can then jump into my OneDrive and I can jump into Walter's documents, those synchronized, and there it is. All of my documentation is literally gone. It's been encrypted. It's been encrypted by RSA 2048 encryption, which would take the compute power of my laptop beyond the heat death of the universe to decrypt. So let's hope that Ian and his team have got something up their sleeve to get my data back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call Ian. I'm going to say, hi, Ian. I may have made a bit of a boo-boo, and subsequently, I'm slightly concerned about my job, my mortgage payments, my relationship with my partner, this, that, and the other. Can you help me? And I'm going to say, first and foremost, the one thing I need is this payroll report. I've got to present it to the board this afternoon. Ian and the team are going to jump into what's called Datto SaaS Protection. Now, Datto SaaS Protection is a platform that basically talks directly from Datto's cloud to Microsoft's cloud and pulls out data 3 times a day. So I know that the data that Ian and the team have got sat ready for me in case of any disaster is no older than 6 to 8 hours. And I know that that's completely separate. So if my data becomes encrypted over here, I can still recover from over here. So I'm going to say, Ian, I need that payroll report. So Ian's going to jump into Richmond Gardens and he's going to launch the Datto SaaS Protection interface. He's then going to drive into OneDrive. As I've said, that's where that is. He's going to dive into my account specifically, and then he's going to go into Walter's documents. There it is. There's that payroll report. I'm going to click that. I need that file back, and I'm going to restore it. I'm going to restore it directly back to Walter. Now, well, it says restore successfully started. So let's jump back into Walter's documents and jump back into, let's jump back into OneDrive, sorry, and refresh that page. And, well, there we go. 1018, backup if I restore, OneDrive, Walter's documents. There's my report back, exactly as it was. Now, when we start looking at the amount of time that it takes to restore these specific documents, we're talking micro milliseconds. It's almost instantaneous due to, frankly, the size of the connection between Datto's cloud and Microsoft's cloud. So what actually Ian and the team have got the ability to do in situations like this is, Adam, your payroll report is there. It's available. It's ready to go. Can you go and present that to the board? And whilst you're presenting that to the board, we'll recover the rest of your mailbox, the rest of your OneDrive, the rest of your SharePoint. We will get all of that data back to how it was before that infection occurred. And then obviously, because today we're only focusing on Datto SaaS Protection specifically, in situations where I've instigated a ransomware infection on my endpoint machine or even my server infrastructure, Ian and the team have got an entire toolkit available to ensure that in situations like that, it's not only recovering data from SaaS-based applications that they're capable to help with, it's also recovering data and rebuilding local appliances and server infrastructure, in some instances, even remotely, so that they never even have to go to site. So what I'd say is if this is absolutely something that you feel your business is lacking at the moment, I'd have a more holistic conversation with Ian and the team about ensuring that they've got all of the measures in place to protect your business. So jumping back into the sort of content, the assumption, as I mentioned earlier, is that my data's in the cloud. And my data's in the cloud, and the cloud is this mythical unicorn in the sky. It's the be-all and end-all. In one of the more recent Creed movies, if you're a Rocky fan, Apollo Creed's son takes a photo of a training plan that Rocky Balboa has written for him, and Rocky says, "So do you not need this?" And he said, no, it's in the cloud. And Rocky Balboa is looking up at the sky in absolute awe and disbelief. In the cloud? What the hell are you talking about, man? And in reality, unfortunately, for organizations that are not in the IT sector, why should they know what the cloud is and how the cloud is absolutely a benefit and a hindrance to some organizations dependent on the way that it's used? So when we start looking at what the cloud is, for all intents and purposes, just someone else's data center. It is just a farm of servers whirring away, owned by someone else. And then they sell space, or they sell the use of applications running on those machines. So when we look at the responsibilities of the organizations provisioning these cloud-based application services, they include keeping the hardware up and running, mitigating against the threat faced by natural disasters, which globally constitute about 10% of business downtime or data loss, and therefore in boring old Britain, from a natural disaster standpoint, equate to almost no data loss or downtime, because there is no such thing as real natural disasters in the UK. And then obviously ensuring that it's got sufficient power supply. Now that's their responsibilities, and it stops hard there. What it does not cover is protecting the data that sit within those platforms. It does not cover prevention of humans being humans. And unfortunately, it does not cover the mitigation against cyber attacks or the threats faced by the rise in cyber terrorism and these criminal activities. And subsequently, actually themselves, these platform providers stipulate quite explicitly where their responsibilities stop. So within their end user license agreements, they say in two areas. One, we strive to keep services up and running. However, all online services suffer occasional disruptions and outages, and subsequently, you may not be able to access your data or content associated with the service, and therefore should have some form of backup in place to protect against situations like this occurring. And just to ensure that this isn't complete smoke and mirrors, I can show you actually within Microsoft's end user license agreement itself, service availability. So there's that section there. If any of you want a bit of nighttime reading, it's quite a comprehensive document, this. But what we've also got here is reverting back to that Adam is leaving Datto. So Adam's leaving the organization because he's maybe been doing things he shouldn't have. Subsequently, Datto are going to call Ian and say, Ian, Adam's left. We don't need to continue using his Microsoft account. Can you therefore close that out? And obviously, therefore, we don't have to continue paying for that. It says quite explicitly here, if your Microsoft account is closed, whether by you or us, firstly, a few things happen. Your right to access the service stops immediately, and we disassociate and delete your data from the service. So that poses huge disruption and threats potentially. One, I can't access the system. Microsoft experienced almost 5 extensive outages at the back end of last year. Now, Microsoft are one of the biggest cloud providers in the world, and you wouldn't expect them to experience outages, but unfortunately, as they quite explicitly say, all online services do suffer occasional disruptions and outages. So that in itself is testament to this, but also this point here, we want to ensure that all organizations maintain compliance and that they don't lose data. If Adam in this hypothetical scenario worked in the accounts department, and Adam does the tax returns every year, and Adam's let go and that data is deleted, the likelihood is it's going to be a year before we get back round and realise that there's a problem. And that problem at that point is irreversible. That data is gone forever. So we need to ensure that we've got platforms in place to mitigate against this. So what are your options? And this comes down to you as organisation owners and the decisions around procurement of IT services and this, that, and the other. The options are threefold, really. You can do nothing. And actually, there are a lot of organisations out there that do nothing. And that's largely due to the fact that they're unaware of the threats they face day to day by not doing something. You can work with the limited recovery features within the Microsoft 365 service, and it does offer 30 days recycling bin recovery. Now, the majority of organizations and individuals don't realize that things have accidentally been deleted within 30 days. Unfortunately, it then passes that period and they then jump up and down and say, we need this back, we need this back. Or you can regain control and you can work with Ian and the team to ensure that your business is protected and covered, and ensure that it's covered by simple and geo-replicated, geo-redundant, easily accessible and fast to recover platform, not too dissimilar to what I've gone through with you this morning. So that is all I was going to cover this morning from a content standpoint. I'm very conscious what we'd quite like to do is open up the floor to a bit of interaction. So I'm going to pass back to Ian, and then obviously Ian will lead any questions that may have come in. But what I will say is thank you once again so much for your time this morning. And even if you can't think of any questions this morning, and I hope we do have some, if you do have any questions, feel free to feed them via Ian and the team to myself, and I'm happy to get back to you with any responses I can.